Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is being criticized by members of her own party for seeing you-know-who in the White House yesterday to talk about issues affecting her state. The visit sure seemed to change the way you-know-who feels about her, though. He used to talk mad stuff about her. Not nice, either. Take a look.
We're honored to have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, great state of Michigan. And she's really done an excellent job. And a very good person.
Yeah.
So maybe he is having some sort of crisis. Maybe he doesn't remember that he didn't care for her.
He had some nicknames for her, right?
He was really kind of
that woman
ugly.
from Michigan.
Oh, that woman. You know, I got to tell you, I know that she's getting a lot of flack from it, but as the governor of the great state of Michigan, she has an absolute obligation, I think, to show up there, do business for the people of her state. Her spokesperson said that while she was at the White House to meet with President Trump about Michigan matters, she was surprised to have been pulled into the Oval Office for the executive order signing, and that her presence is not an endorsement of the actions taken. And I think she just got used and played. She clearly looked uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, he tricked her. And he's a trickster. He's a fraudster.
And you're right. She looked very unhappy. I mean, I haven't seen anybody that unhappy in the Oval Office since Marco Rubio was sinking into that sofa during the Zelensky meeting. But I think it was a very bad time for her to be there while these executive orders were being signed, waging an all-out attack again on freedom of expression. These are executive orders weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after former employees of Trump's first term that spoke up against him. And I kept saying during the campaign that it was very ironic to me that that Trump and Republicans were always saying that Democrats were communists and socialists. Look, I fled Nicaragua. This is exactly what Daniel Ortega is doing in Nicaragua right now, where if anybody criticizes him, if anybody speaks up against him, he considers it treason to the country, and he is disappearing them and putting them in jail. We have got to stand up like Americans against these attacks against freedom of speech. Freedom of speech defines us as a country. We cannot allow this to happen. What's happening against the censorship against the press, like the AP being banned from the Oval Office, censorship against protests and people being able to protest. And now these attacks, this is just something we cannot put up with, America.
Yeah. Talking about Governor Whitmer and the judgment from a lot of Democrats as to what it was a bad look to be working with Donald Trump and be in the Oval Office, why these executive orders are being signed. The conversation around this is why I despise partisan politics. It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She literally represents Michigan. She got voted in, and so did Donald Trump. Yeah. He's the president of the United States. We're going through all of this. She has to work with them and deal with the manufacturing, the stuff that affects it. A picture is 1 second. We've all been stuck in places where you can't get out. I can see that on her face. I don't blame her at all. But a Democratic operative said...
she's so uncomfortable.
Well, and a Democratic operative said it best. There's a sort of absolutism among Democrats where you're either all against him or you're not against him enough. And nothing gets done in that vein. She has to do this. She had to be there. I think discussing a picture and whether she was there or not is we talk about Donald Trump flooding the zone because it's a distraction to what's going on. The conversations around this picture are a distraction from what's going on.
But look at her
there
face.
Are more important things.
When you look at her face, it's like, oh, man, I can't believe this
reminds me of that Homer Simpson disappearing into the bushes.
Into the bushes from a retreat.
But
it's like,
I tend to,
it's like,
that's the one.
Man.
I tend to agree. I was watching it live. He was signing an EO that's very specific to waterways in Michigan and a certain endangered species that was like impacting the community. It was a very specific Michigander thing. And to your point, he won Michigan, she won Michigan. They're going to have to find where they can work together. Really quickly, I want to mention the Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs EOs. Chris Krebs is a personal friend of mine. I would strongly encourage someone around the president to talk him into
You're talking about the executive
back.
orders?
Yes.
Coming after
Krebs is being penalized because he said that the 2020 election was safe and fair while overseeing our cybersecurity infrastructure.
Yeah.
He worked for Donald Trump. He put in reforms that allowed Donald Trump to safely be reelected in 2024 when he won. And this, to me, is just not what people elected him to do. He is a good public servant. He's not somebody who goes out of his way to antagonize Donald Trump, and I just think it's incredible.
And by the way,
I don't-
everyone,
I-
dissent is not unlawful.
Yeah.
Dissent
Well, I
is
just
not
don't understand.
unlawful.
It's American.
You know, I don't understand when the First Amendment disappeared.
Yeah.
And this is also on us. Every time we don't say, hey, you can't do that, they do more.
Yeah.
You've got to speak up. You've got to make your voices heard. We've got to do this. It's up to us.